Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. Before we get started, I do like to go into some news and announcements I just found out about over the past week, and I do have a couple items for you. The first one here is that a new expansion has just been announced for the game Distilled. This is going to be adding cocktails into the game. I don't think we have a launch date for this one just yet, but make sure to stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already, because I will cover this in more details during the week of its launch. One other campaign that I want to make a quick mention to is a game that I actually missed last week. I did know about this one, but there were some technical difficulties, so I just wanted to give it a little bit of a shout out now, and this is for the game I Made You a Mixtape. This one's really interesting because not only is it designed by Dan Hughes, who created the whole Core Quest series of games, but this one is also co-designed by Mike DeLisio, who does fantastic work over on the Dice Tower. He's definitely someone who's helped me make a lot of my decisions on games I want to buy, so it's really cool to see a game designed by him. And this one does look like a lot of fun. This one uses an I split you choose mechanism where players are going to be drawing hands of different songs that they're going to be trying to configure into their own mixtape. But from your hand you have to create two stacks, one that's just one card and one that's two cards, and then you're going to be passing that to the player on your left. That player is then going to be choosing one to keep and then passing whatever one they decided not to keep back to you, and then players are going to be using those cards to add to their own mixtapes. But each of the cards are also going to have these ribbons on them, and you're going to be trying to match those up to represent a good flow on your mixtape. And you're going to be creating two stacks of these cards in front of you, representing each side of your cassette tape. Players are going to be scoring each side of their cassette tape for the flow that they've created, as well as the different variety of songs. And if this one sounds interesting to you, you can go ahead and find it live on Kickstarter right now. You can go ahead and get yourself a nice game while also supporting two designers who have contributed quite a lot to the board game community. As always, I do want to give a quick mention to Alex over at Boardgame Co. as well as Michael over at Zilla Blitz, because we are entering the month of November, and both Michael and Alex put up a video going over the entirety of the month and letting you know of some upcoming games that you might be interested in. Alex focuses on your more traditional games like I do, but he's going to be letting you know of all those heavy hitters that are upcoming if you want to see a bit into the future, whereas Michael focuses more on the historical war games, which both Alex and I do not cover in as much detail. So if you're interested in any of that, I will have links to both the channel in the description down below. But that is everything I have for an intro, and this is a bit of a slower week. I think we're in the eye of the storm here. I'm not going to say we're through the flood yet because I am filming this one quite a bit earlier than usual. It's currently Wednesday, and I normally film these on Thursday and Friday, but I'm busy Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so I have to film this one now, but I won't be surprised if a few more games are added to the list. So if you do want to see if there's any additional games, I do post these lists on Reddit every single Sunday, and I do have a link to my profile as well as the board game Reddit community if you want to check those out. But without further ado, let's get into it. And the first campaign we have launches on November 2nd, and this one is a new expansion for Era of Tribes, and this one is the Beliefs and Betrayals expansion. And if you're not familiar with Era of Tribes, this is a worker placement strategy game where players are going to be playing as asymmetrical tribes, developing and leveling up your tribe, but then also expanding and developing your empire. Players are going to be using action cards to gain influence, and players are trying to get the most influence throughout the game in order to be the winner of the game. Something that's really interesting about this game is that it does offer a full-on map board that you can just go ahead and play the game on, but there is also this optional purchase for the modular tiles, and this is going to allow you to explore out and create the map as you perform that explore action. And what this does is allow you to turn the game into a full-on 4X game. But this new expansion is going to be adding a bunch more content that you can just go ahead and mix into the game, but there's also going to be a couple new additional modules that are going to be adding more layers of strategy and more boards to interact with. There's going to be the religious board where players are going to be able to choose different religions that they want to move up on, and each of those will grant you with different benefits that are tied into that original core game. This also introduces a whole bunch of new actions that you'll be able to use to interact with that board, and also to apply the benefits of the religion that you've chose to invest in. And this is all outlined on this board on the left here, but there's also this new board on the right, which is your intelligence board, and this is going to be coming with a master spy for each of the players, as well as a bunch of agents. You're going to be using these to directly interact with your opponents, and there's going to be a whole bunch of new actions for you to infiltrate your opponents or also defend against their infiltrations against you. If you're a fan of this one, or if all that sounded interesting to you and you want to learn more, I will have a link to the campaign in the description down below, and of course you can click to get notified. And launching on the 5th, we have Western Legends Stories, and this one is not an expansion to the original game. This one's actually a standalone sandbox-style campaign version of that game, and there are a lot of differences in this game, but there is still going to be that same feel. This one is also not a legacy game, but there is a core rule set that you're going to be learning and playing through at the beginning of the game, and then new rules will be added as you play through the different chapters. What's also neat about this is that when you start the game, there's just going to be one section of land that all the players are going to be playing on, but the map is actually made up of all these big jigsaw puzzle pieces, and as you explore out and take actions that have you exploring new land, you're going to be taking those appropriate tiles and adding them onto your board. But like I said, this is a sandbox style game, so there's going to be lots of flexibility with developing your character and deciding which skills you want to invest in, what type of land you want to own and where, and what kind of legacy you want to create. Players can play as outlaws or try to earn an honest living, or even try to play as the sheriff themselves. Of course, this new version is going to be much more focused on that story arc than the original game, and players will be influencing that overall story as they make different decisions and as they make different successes and failures throughout the game. This narrative takes place over 5 chapters, and each chapter is going to be represented by its own deck, but you're only going to be playing with a subset of those cards each time you play through this game, so if you do decide to start over again, you can get a completely different story arc with a completely different ending. What's also really cool about this is that there's going to be a bunch of different game control characters as well that also have their own deck of cards, and the decisions you make and interactions you have with those characters are also going to dictate how they develop within that story arc, and you're also only going to be able to see a subset of their cards depending on what happens in the game. The layers don't end there though, because there's also going to be a whole deck of different secrets that players can uncover that all can offer different benefits, can be found in all different areas of the map. I should probably also mention that this one is my own personal pick of the week. The original game has been really well received and refined over the years, and this one is making further refinements that I believe will only improve the game more. And if you are a fan of games like Red Dead Redemption, like I am, this is about the closest you're going to find of a board game version of that game. And a really cool overlap here is that if your character dies in this game, there's actually other characters that will succeed you, and you're going to be taking control of those characters instead. And if you've played the original Red Dead, that probably sounds familiar to you, but if you haven't, well, I think the game's been out for long enough that you can't be mad at me for any spoilers, but that may or may not happen at some point in the game. But like I said, this version's going to have a completely rewritten rule set, and it's going to have completely redesigned cards and game elements, but still will give you that familiar feeling of the original game, maybe just in a little bit more of an epic package. If this one sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out, and I will have it linked down below, and of course you can click to get notified once it launches. And the next campaign we have is Vanguard Normandy, which is launching on November 5th, and this one is a miniatures historical war game, and players are going to be playing either on the side of the USA or the side of Germany. There's not a whole lot of info on this game right now, but each player is going to be beginning in control of 3 battlefield sectors out on the board, and each of these sectors is going to be granting you with different points that you'll be able to spend in order to buy and deploy more units. Each of these units will have their own set of stats and way that they operate, and players will be using those units to take actions and try to eliminate their opponent. Like I said, there's not a lot of info on this one just yet, but if it does sound interesting to you, I'm sure Zilla Blitz will be going into this one in a lot more detail than I just did once it launches. You can find a link to his channel as well as this campaign in the description down below. And also launching on the 5th, we have a brand new expansion for the game Dungeons of Doria, and this one is the Arcane Abominations expansion. If you're not familiar with this original game, this is a cooperative dungeon crawler that can be played both as one-off scenarios, or you can play through the several included campaigns that are going to be stringing several scenarios together. The new expansion is going to be adding a bunch of new playable characters, new monsters, gear, spells, and traps that you can just go ahead and mix into the game, but there's also going to be all these monster modifier cards that you can combine with any monster to create nearly endless amounts of unique monster combinations, and to make those monsters just a little bit more difficult. There's also going to be a new campaign added into the game, as well as a bunch of new scenarios. But as I mentioned, this is a cooperative game, and players are going to be playing as different characters with different stats and abilities, as well as different restrictions as to what gear and items they can use. Players are going to be using actions to move around out on the board and discover new areas, with each new area potentially adding new monsters onto the board. Players are also going to be using actions to fight, and defeating monsters can gain you with additional experience points, as well as new loot and items that you can use to upgrade your character, but using those experience points to upgrade your stats. Turn order in this game is determined by the players and the enemies' different initiative values, and the enemies' initiative values will just be a predetermined value, whereas each of the characters can actually have a different value from round to round. And this is a really interesting aspect of this game because on your turn you're going to be rolling dice and then combining that with your stats in order to determine the amount of initiative that you have. What's cool about this is that this game utilizes exploding dice, so any values that roll a 0, you're actually going to be able to roll 2 more dice, adding those results onto your overall roll, and if any of those are zeros, you're just going to be doing that over again, which can actually create quite huge combos where you're getting quite a lot of initiative, which is really nice because your initiative also doubles as your action points. You're going to be using those action points to move around on the board, collect loot, interact with different items and mission objectives using skill checks, and of course also to fight different enemies. Combat in this game is determined by rolling dice in combination with either your attack or defense value, depending on which side of the attack you're on. And this also uses the exploding dice mechanism, adding a little bit more excitement into the combat. And if you are able to reach certain thresholds of damage, you can actually deal additional critical damage on top of your base amount. But the game continues like this as players play throughout those different scenarios and try to complete their mission objectives. And if you are able to do that, you win the game, but if any of the players are defeated, then all the players lose. If you want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below, and of course you can click to follow along with this campaign and get notified once it launches. And also launching on the 5th, we have a role-playing game called Mike and Magic, and I don't normally dive into as much detail with these ones, but this one is a role-playing game that combines spellcasting with the art of rap battles. Players are each going to be creating their own rapper persona, and then you're going to be managing your Mike and Magic stats, with your Mike stats getting better with each success that you have, and then your Magic can be used to augment that or to help protect you from any failures. And of course, any time that magic is involved, you can always expect the unexpected, and players are going to be trying to do everything in rhyme, and doing this well can actually move you through space and time because the words you say not only get you fame, but also change the entire environment of the game. Face rival crews with the words you brew, impress the judge and the crowd in the rap battle underground, and if that sounds fun, check out the description. Also launching on November 5th, we have Drag and Dusted, and unfortunately I couldn't find any information on this game. There's no BGG page or anything like that, and I couldn't find their website. But in this game, players are competing as drag queens, and you're going to be taking actions in order to collect different cards in order to determine your outfit, which can earn you all sorts of dazzle points. But then players are going to be using actions to put on different performances in the game, and that's going to be earning you victory points as well. I don't know exactly what sort of mechanisms are going to be used here, but if you do want to learn more about this one, and if you at least like the theme, you can find a link to this one in the description down below. And this next one is another one that I couldn't find a whole lot of info on, but this one is called Inheritance, and it's going to be launching also on November 5th. And in this game, you're going to be playing as one of 24 unique characters who were randomly selected to be elevated to the very top of society. Players are going to be starting the game with a few resources and accessing the most basic locations around them. But you're going to be exploring the city to gather resources, gain influence in new locations, and you're going to be drawing cards to find these new locations to add to your districts, engage with different socialites and stock traders, and gamble with your debt. Sounds like this game also has some sort of time limit incorporated into it, and players are going to be trying to reach their objective before that time runs out. But like I said, there's just not much more info on this one, so if you do want to check it out, I will have it linked down below. And of course, you can follow along to get notified and also get a $5 discount on your pledge. And launching on November 6th, we have Ozob, a Cyberpunk game, and this one's a cooperative dungeon crawler with a Cyberpunk theme. But this is a game that offers 10 different scenarios, each with its own particular event deck, as well as unique win conditions. And players are going to be choosing characters with unique abilities at the start of the game, and they're each going to have their own deck that you're going to be starting with because this is a deck building game. But you'll be able to build that up with more cards as the game progresses. You're going to be using those cards in order to take your various actions, actions, and this does incorporate a unique push your luck element, where the game actually allows you to draw additional cards from your deck, but some of the cards will have this X marked on them, and if you ever get 3 of those, then you're gonna bust. But each round, players are gonna be taking actions to move around the board, attack different enemies, and perform various skill tests. At the end of a round, you're gonna be drawing an event to modify the board and other elements of the game, and then the enemies are gonna have a turn, but players will want to defeat those enemies not only to eliminate that threat, but also because this could be required to complete certain objectives, find new items, or gain additional cards that you'll be able to mix into your deck. This is a game where if one player dies, all the players lose the game, so you do want to be working together here and making sure that you're doing whatever you can to not only save yourself, but your fellow players as well. And if this one does sound interesting to you, I will have it linked in the description down below. And launching on November 7th, we have Onoda, and this one is a really interesting solo survival game because it's based on an actual true story of a Japanese soldier in the Philippines who didn't know or believe the war had ended, and he had continued to fight and survive in the jungle all the way into the 1970s. In this game, you're going to be playing as that particular character, and you're going to be managing your health and your paranoia over 6 rounds. And those are going to be represented on a single track, but with tokens going in the opposite direction. And if those ever meet or overlap in any way, you're going to be going through a difficult test that, if you fail, will result in your death and cost you the game. The game takes place on this map here with randomly assigned tokens to each of the locations, which are going to be determining which actions are available in those locations for that particular game. The different actions are going to allow you to visit that location to repair that particular item of equipment, because you will be using these items to complete different missions, which normally will break that item or perhaps one of your other items. There is also an action you can take anywhere out on the map, and that is to gather food. You do also have a free movement action, but the problem with taking any of these actions is that every time you move into a space, you're going to be adding one of these alert tokens, and anytime you take any action within that space, you're also going to be adding additional alert tokens for each of those actions. This isn't really a good thing because anytime that you perform an action other than the movement action, you're going to have to perform a skill test, and the difficulty of that skill test is determined by how many alert tokens are in that space. The way this works is that you're going to be drawing a token from a bag, and you know exactly which tokens are in that bag. There's not a whole whack of different tokens, but you're going to need to draw a token that's higher than the amount of alert tokens in that space. But gathering food and repairing your items is really all you're doing to try and survive. It's not really going to be granting you any victory points at the end of the game. The way that you do gain victory points is at the start of each round, you're going to be drawing a mission card, and this is going to be providing you with some sort of benefit and victory points if you are able to complete it. But it usually does also have some sort of punishment if you do fail your attempt. These are always optional, so you don't have to complete them, but like I said, it is the main way that you're going to be scoring victory points. And if you're wondering how he's getting missions when the war is over, well, that's the reason they're optional, because these are self-imposed missions that he just happens to think he needs to do. But the fun doesn't stop there, because after every action other than a movement, not only do you put one of those alert tokens in that space, but you're also going to be drawing an event card, and these can give instant or ongoing positive, but mostly negative effects. And they could give you some different options or trade-offs in order to mitigate the amount of damage that they do. Luckily, you do have 2 comrades that can help you with different missions and events, but you will have to feed yourself and them at the start of each round, assuming that they are still alive. I already mentioned that there's an action that you can use in any space in order to gather food, and the way that this works is exactly the same as performing any other action. You just have to draw a token from the bag, and it needs to be higher than the amount of alert tokens in your space. But what's cool about this is that the amount of food you get is on the backside of that token, which means as you're pulling food out of that bag, you're actually limiting the values that still remain in it, which is going to allow you to think ahead and determine if you want to take any more actions. For example, if you already happen to take all the lower tokens out as you're gathering food, you might want to take some more difficult actions knowing that there's still higher value tokens in that bag. But at the end of each round, you will get to remove 1 alert token for free out of each location, and you can also pay a rice for each location to then remove a second alert token. The game continues like this over a series of rounds representing years and years passing by, and if you're able to survive that long, that's going to be long enough for Onoda to finally accept that the war has come to an end. But at that point, you're going to be adding up your victory points from your completed missions, which is going to determine how well you did in the game, which is a matter of perspective because although this man did think he was still in a war and that he was serving his country, he did also do a lot of terrible things because of that. It's an interesting story, but sadly Onoda did kill about 30 innocent people over this time, so he is definitely not a hero. And that is everything for this week, but don't leave yet because we still got a few awesome giveaways to announce. And the first one we have here is an all-in pledge for 4 new games released by Allplay Games. And these games do include designers like John D. Clare and Reiner Knizia. Ruins is a really interesting card shedding game where you're going to be both leveling up cards to make their actions more powerful, but then you're also using those actions to try and get rid of all the cards in your hand. Oddlands is a tile placement and token placement game where there's going to be a few different objectives of different types of fauna and flora that you're trying to create certain patterns of. You're going to be overlaying different tiles and putting out tokens in order to try and create those patterns to score yourself as much victory points as possible. Vegas Strip is a game where players are going to be betting their limited amount of tokens on various casinos, and you can only put up to 2 tokens on a single casino. But essentially you're trying not to be the highest bidder at that casino once those tokens are revealed. The catch here is that every player knows in secret one casino that is a corrupt casino where you do want to be the highest bidder there. So you're going to be trying to mislead the other players as to which casino you know is a corrupt one, hopefully causing them to play their tokens less optimally than you. Finally, we have Money, which is a really interesting set collection game where players are going to be playing different currencies of money. Your bet is going to be determining your turn order, but what's interesting here is that when it's your turn, you can choose to pick up any stack of money out on the table. This includes the 2 pre-made stacks, but then also any of the other stacks bid by any of the other players. There's a few different ways that the scoring works at the end of the game, but generally you want to get as much money in each currency as possible because you do need a minimum amount in a currency in order for it to start earning you victory points. As I mentioned, this one's for an all-in pledge, which is going to get you all 4 of these games as well as their deluxe component upgrades. And if you are interested in this one, feel free to leave a comment down below and you can say anything that you want. But let's try and make the comment section as spooky as possible, so I'm expecting a lot of scary emojis and Halloween-themed comments. And we do have 2 more giveaways this week, but I'm going to be running these ones over on the Discord, which I'll have a link to in the description down below. And these are also super easy to enter. All you got to do is head over to the giveaways channel and click the emoji underneath those giveaways. But the first one we have is for a pledge for the game Estate Raise the Realm, which is a really interesting worker placement game where you can take actions on your own personal board, but then you can also take actions on the shared board. And what's cool about this is that as you move up the tracks on your own personal board, that's actually going to be unlocking new worker placement locations that you'll be able to take advantage of to take more powerful actions throughout the game. There's also actions you can use to draw and play cards to the bottom of your board, which will determine what sort of resources and bonuses you get when you perform a production action, because each of those cards is going to be working a little bit differently depending on the card that it is. This giveaway is going to get you a copy of the game, but to enter in this one you do need to be located in the UK, the EU, or in North America. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Monarchs of Camelot, and this one is a really interesting competitive game where each player is going to be playing as a different character, but you're going to be playing different cards either to the left-hand side or the right-hand side of that character, with each of those sides giving you different actions and worker locations where you can put tokens in order to take those various actions. These are going to allow you to move up various tracks or earn resources or spend those resources to take other actions or round specific actions. The cool thing here is that you can play cards to either side of your character, but once one side has 4 cards or more, that's going to be forcing you to transform into that version of your character, which will be a more powerful form, but it's also going to be forcing you to play all the cards to that same side for the rest of the game. There are also some story elements and objectives that you might be trying to complete each round, but this giveaway is going to be for a deluxe edition of the game. And once again, I will be running this one over on the Discord, and you can feel free to enter this one if you're in North America, the UK, the EU, Australia, or New Zealand. Good luck in the giveaways, and you can find both of them under the giveaways channel on the Discord, and all you got to do is click that emoji underneath that giveaway, which will get automatically drawn at the end of the following week. But now let's go ahead and draw the winner from last week's giveaway, which was for a pledge for Galen's Games Mint Tin series. And to do that, we use this application here, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my members over on Ko-fi who help make all of this possible. So let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Andrew Money, who was selected from our supporters, so congratulations on the win here. Feel free to reach out to me at adam@shelfclutter.com, but I will reach out to you otherwise. But that's everything I have for you this week, and I hope you have yourself a excellent weekend, and if you do celebrate Halloween, I hope you had a really fun Halloween as well, hopefully with a couple Halloween parties. I do have a little dinner party I will be attending this weekend, which means that I do have a bit of cooking to do, so hopefully everyone survives that. But as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.
Oh.